everybody, welcome to the OklaRoots YouTube channel. Today's tutorial is a fun, quick, I would call it scrappy sew. It's the For the Love of Change pattern by Mormino. I will have a link for the pattern down in the description of this video. This pattern is super great for beginners who want a little bit more of a challenge. So it's not like a true beginner. For that, I would suggest something like a snack bag, a little sandwich bag. But if you're a beginner, but you want just a little bit more of a challenge, ba-bam! Oh my gosh. Like, this is super, super vibrant in person, but whenever I see it in the monitor when I'm filming, oh, you guys, the colors are just amazing. So this is the small version of the change pouch. You can see we have this beautiful heart detail in the middle. We have a zipper up top. We have a little bit of piping going around the outside. I'm going to walk you through every single step of this, even how to cut out this heart. Also, I'll be letting you know what's optional. You don't have to add the heart. You don't have to add the piping. If you remove the heart and the piping, now you have a true, perfect beginner bag. This pattern also includes a little D-ring on the side, which is great if you want to add a strap to it to make it a wristlet. You could also use a small swivel hook here instead of a D-ring, and then you could just clip it onto like a little bracelet, and then it would just hang like that, which is something I really like to do and we're going to do in today's tutorial. So this is the small version, and this is the larger version. And you can see you can change the heart design to either applique a heart on top of the fabric you're using for the exterior, or cut the exterior and applique the heart behind it. This is the method we're going to be using today, and we're going to just zhuzh it up just a little bit, and I'll show you. We're gonna glam it up just a bit. If you're going to do this method where you cut the heart out of the exterior and have some background fabric peeking through, I do highly suggest you use vinyl. Quilt cotton is not going to be your friend with this type of thing. Same thing with this one. If you're going to applique a heart on top of your exterior fabric, I suggest that the heart be vinyl, not quilt cotton. You can see for this one here, I use quilt cotton as my exterior fabric, and then I use that vinyl heart. And then on the back, I just use the rest of the vinyl to put the back. I mean, this is such a fun bag. On this one, I did just the opposite. I used vinyl on the front as my exterior, cut out the heart so I have quilt cotton poking through, and then on the back, I just used quilt cotton. If you're an Animal Crossing fan, you're just like freaking out right now. I completely understand. Many of you probably know this fabric is from Backstitch Fabrics. They are a group on Facebook. I will have a link for them down in the description. This is fabric that can be difficult to come by. So in today's tutorial, we'll be making the small size where we applique from behind the exterior panel. We're gonna add a little bit of sparkle to it. We'll see if it works. So if you're new to the channel, please consider clicking subscribe down below. If at any point you like the video, please give it a like. If you have anything you want to ask, any shout outs, anything like that, leave them down in the comment section of this video. At the very top of the comment section will be a comment from me, and it will have timestamps for every single part of this tutorial. This is a quick one, guys, so there's probably not going to be a whole lot of timestamps, but if there's just one step you're interested in, check the comment section. You can just click on that timestamp and it'll take you straight there in the video. This is going to be an eventful video today. Are you ready? Okay, let's get started. I know! So for this bag, you're going to need 1/4 yard of exterior fabric, and this can be quilt cotton, this can be cotton lycra, vinyl, cork, and then you're going to need 1/4 yard of lining fabric. Like I said, you can get pretty scrappy with this. So I'm using the scrap piece of cotton lycra that I have interfaced with SF101. This will be for my exterior back and the heart cutout that peeks through the back of the vinyl. And then I'm using this piece of vinyl here for the exterior front and for the tab that will hold the swivel hook. And then I'm just using quilt cotton for my lining. You can add SF101 or any sort of woven interfacing to your lining if you'd like. I will not be adding any SF101 to the lining today. I only have the SF101 added to my cotton lycra, and that's just because cotton lycra likes to roll up a lot, and that will keep it nice and firm for me. To give the bag a little bit of extra character, you can use some pre-made piping. I make my own piping. This is a great activity to do on a rainy day where you feel like sewing something but you don't want to commit to a whole project. I'll have a link for the tutorial for this piping down in the description. Dana from Made Everyday has a great tutorial for this. You're going to also need an all-purpose zipper. Now I'm making the small bag, so mine's going to be 7 inches. So since I'm using zipper tape today, I have this beautiful little Mickey zipper pull to go with it. You can use a 1/2 inch D-ring. I'm actually going to use a 1/2 inch swivel hook instead so that I can clip it onto bracelets. For my thread, I'll be using this Mara 70. A couple extra things I'm using today just to kind of sparkle up the pouch is a piece of clear vinyl. Now I'm going to put this clear vinyl over my in-cut heart, and I'll show you how I do that. This is 10 gauge clear vinyl. I'm going to also add a little bit of these sequins. If you look on Etsy, there are so many options, but you can see there's a lot of different shapes and colors in here. So we're going to try playing with this with the clear vinyl today. Like I said, I'm going to be using zipper tabs. So I have 2 pieces of my lining fabric. This is just quilt cotton. They're both cut at 2 inches by 2 inches. So here's the template for the change purse. You're going to want to cut out this heart on the line. If you can cut it right on the line, you can save the heart cutout, and you can use this to cut out applique to go over the bag, or use this part to cut out the applique to go behind the bag. For the front exterior, I'm going to be using this beautiful crackled gold vinyl from My Punk Broidery. And for the back of the exterior, I'll be using this cotton lycra that's interfaced with woven interfacing. For my heart that's going to peek through this, I have a scrap piece of my cotton interfacing. And what you can do is you take the template over your fabric, line it up where you want, and then just cut out your piece of fabric so that it's bigger than this heart. So you can see my fabric scrap is bigger than that heart cutout. This is going to make sure we have plenty of room to stitch it down around. For my lining, I have 2 pieces of quilt cotton. I do not have this interfaced with anything today. And then for the D-ring connector, I have a small scrap piece of my vinyl. So let's first cut out the heart from our exterior vinyl for our reverse applique. So grab your exterior panel that you're going to be cutting the heart out from, and grab your template. Take your exterior panel and lay it right side down. We'll be working on the back of it. Take your template and lay it over your exterior panel. You can add a clip or 2 here just to make sure the paper doesn't move around, but don't let it get too close to that heart or else it'll lift up on the paper. Grab your fabric marking tool, and on the wrong side of your exterior, just trace that heart cutout. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect. Applique can be tricky for those of us who don't have a lot of experience, like me. Once you have the heart traced, go ahead and remove your template. Now grab some fabric scissors. Smaller scissors are easier to work with here with this heart. I like to cut the center of the heart first, and then just cut out towards my marked line, and then just slowly and carefully cut on that drawn line to cut out my heart. Remember, you can cut into the heart as much as you need to, unless you're planning on saving that scrap for another bag. Then you're going to need to be more careful about making sure you stay right on your line. All right, and once you have that cut out, this is what your front panel should look like. You have this nice little heart cut out. And so what you can do now is, if you're just using a piece of vinyl or quilt cotton, whatever, you can lay that down right side up, lay your heart cut out over it with the vinyl side right side up, and then you can just glue this or pin this in place and stitch around this. But like I said, we're going to add just a little bit more sparkle here just to see if it works or not. I haven't tested this out. So before we do this step, we're going to do another step. Grab your scrap that you're going to be using for the inside of the heart, grab your clear vinyl, and then grab a little bit of your glitter. Now you might notice that these little sequins, they love to stick to this clear vinyl. So I'm just going to sprinkle just a few on it, on my clear vinyl, just like this. There we go. I know some of you guys absolutely hate the idea of glitter or sequins or anything like that. So by all means, skip this step if you'd like. So now I have my vinyl with the sequins on it. I'm going to take my piece of fabric and lay it right side down, right over those sequins, and centered on my vinyl as best as I can. If you'd like, you can go ahead and trim down your vinyl. Mine is a little bit big. I'm going to add some clips. Okay, so this should now be what we have. What I'm going to do before I applique this onto my bag is I'm going to go to the sewing machine, and I'm just going to sew around the edge of this little vinyl sequin fabric sandwich just to hold the sequins in place, and then we can applique this onto the bag. Since we're working with this clear vinyl that can be pretty sticky at our sewing machine, I'm going to cover it with a piece of just tissue paper, just like that. And then I will sew it from the back of my fabric at the sewing machine. I'm just going to sew about 1/4 of an inch all the way around this scrap piece of fabric. Once you have the vinyl and the fabric sewn together, you can go ahead and remove your tissue paper. All right, once you have your glitter kind of spaced out the way you want it, we can go ahead and add this to our bag. To make this easier, you can use some double-sided tape, or you can just use some pins. Since I'm using vinyl, I'm actually just going to add a few pieces of my double-sided tape to the back of this. You could also use masking tape if you had that on hand instead. So now lay your scrap, however you have it, right side up. Grab your exterior fabric with the heart cut out and lay that right side up, centered over whatever design you have in your scrap that you want to highlight. So of course, I just love this little Mickey and Minnie cutout right here. So I'm just going to push down so my double-sided tape will stick to the vinyl. Now we're going to go to the sewing machine and we're just going to slowly top stitch around this heart at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So as you can imagine, if you are not a very skilled top stitcher like I am, coordinating thread is your friend here. You can see that I use coordinating thread this time and you can't really see my top stitching at all, which is good because I want you to look at the design, not at my kind of jaggedy edges on my top stitching. So you can go ahead and flip this over. And if you have any kind of bulky remnants over here, we can just trim this down. Don't trim too close to the heart. And make sure you don't accidentally cut the exterior fabric. All right, once you have it trimmed down and you're happy with your design, we can move on with constructing the bag. So grab your D-ring connector and lay it wrong side up. We're going to mark a midpoint line. So this is actually just going to be 1/2 of an inch in from the long sides. This is going to be a very small connector. Now take your long edges and fold them up to meet that middle line. If you're using quilt cotton here, you can just press this with an iron. If you're using vinyl, clips will work just fine here. Another option is to run a piece of double-sided tape down the center of your connector and just push these to meet. Now we're going to take this to the sewing machine and we're going to sew along both of the clipped edges at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So once you have this top stitch down, you can grab your D-ring or your swivel hook. Like I said today, I'm using a swivel hook just so I can easily attach it to whatever I want. And then we're going to wrap this around the swivel hook so that the raw edges are together, just like this. So when you pinch it closed, you won't see any of those long raw edges on the back. We can just take this to the sewing machine and just top stitch along this bottom right here just to secure it in place. Now grab your exterior panel with the heart cut out and then grab your D-ring connector. You can use your template to help you find placement for this. And we're going to place our D-ring connector so that it's pointing into the center of the bag, right where that placement mark is. And you can move this around if you want. Clip it in place. And now we're just going to go base this on at the sewing machine at 1/4 inch seam allowance. All right, once you have that basted in place, now it's time to add the piping. I usually have a large ball of piping somewhere just like this, so I just grab it. So take the end of your piping and fold it down at a 90-degree angle so that it's pointing away from the corded piping part. You can add a clip here just to keep it together. And now we're going to attach this so that the angle is about 1/2 of an inch down from the top of the bag. So I just use the grid line on my cutting mat and I see 1/2 of an inch down, and then I just make sure the piping goes like that, matching up with that 1/2 of an inch, and then clip in place. Remember, the bulky part of the piping is pointing into the center of the bag. And now just clip around the entire edge of your bag. If you're using a long piece of piping like I am, once you get to the other side of your panel, you can just trim it down. Make sure it extends past the top of the panel though. And then, again, using the grid lines on my cutting mat, I'm just going to pin this up to 1/2 of an inch from the top edge and then just fold it down, just like this. And then I'll use a clip over here to help hold that fold in place. So now we're going to go to the sewing machine, and using my zipper foot, I'm just going to stitch over the stitching on my piping to hold it in place on my bag. After I stitch down over that piping stitching, I'm going to do a second row of stitching about 1/8 of an inch from the edge of the panel just to hold down these raw edges of the piping. Alright, once you have your piping attached, you can go ahead and trim down any excess you have hanging off. You could save trimming down for later if you feel like you might have to readjust your piping. Okay, so go ahead and put this to the side and let's prep our zipper. So if you're using a pre-made zipper, go ahead and just use that with the pattern. If you're using zipper tape and you want to try the zipper tabs, this is what I do. So I'm going to trim my zipper tape down to 7 inches. Once you have your zipper tape trimmed, you can add your zipper pull. Now keep your zipper in the middle and make sure both ends of your zipper tape are closed up. If one end is open, go to the sewing machine and just stitch it closed. That will make attaching the zipper tabs easier. So grab your 2 zipper tabs and lay them wrong side up. Fold them in half, wrong sides together, and press. We're just trying to find that midpoint mark right now. Go ahead and unfold your zipper tabs and take the parallel raw edges, fold them up, wrong sides together to meet that pressed midpoint mark you just made. And make sure you do this on both edges. All right, now we can attach our zipper tabs to our zipper. So what you're going to want to do is with the raw edge side up, lay the end of your zipper tape so that the edge goes right to that midpoint mark. And we're just going to hug our zipper tab around the end of that zipper. Try to get it as tight in there as possible. Sometimes these zipper tabs can kind of loosen up a little bit along the edge, which then makes our zipper just a little bit longer than that 7 inches. We really want to keep the zipper at 7 inches. So add these to both sides. All right, now let's go to the sewing machine and top stitch along both of the folded edges at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So it's along the inside of the zipper tab and along the outside of the zipper tab. Once you have your zipper tabs top stitched on, you can just trim them down so that they're the same width as your zipper tape. Okay, so let's mark the midpoint of our zipper tape. Fold your zipper tape tabs together and then just pinch to find the middle of your zipper tape. And you can mark it with any sort of marking tool. Try to mark it in the seam allowance, so right along the edge of your zipper tape. Do this on both sides of your zipper tape, so the top and the bottom. All right, grab your exterior panel with the heart cut out and then fold it in half to find the midpoint of that top raw edge. So now take your zipper and lay it right side down on top of your exterior panel, lining up those midpoint marks, and then clip at the midpoint first and then work your zipper out. Essentially, your zipper should be 1/2 of an inch shorter on each edge than your exterior panel. All right, now we're going to go to the sewing machine and just top stitch along the edge that we just clipped at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Once you have your zipper basted on, grab one of your lining panels and lay it right side down so that it's right side against right side of the exterior, and clip it in place along that top edge. Now we're going to sew along this clipped edge at 1/4 inch seam allowance. You want to make sure you use the zipper foot here so you can get nice and close to those zipper teeth. Once you have your lining top stitch on, go ahead and push it away from the zipper and we can just press this. If you have vinyl, make sure you're careful not to touch that with your iron. So we're going to press our exterior and our linings wrong sides together, both of them away from the zipper. Now what I like to do is I like to clip the bottom edges of the exterior and lining panel together just to make sure it's all lined up correctly before I top stitch. And that way when I turn it over, I can just kind of tug on the zipper to get a nice flat edge right here. Now we're going to go back to the sewing machine and top stitch along the zipper on the exterior panel at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Alright, once you have that top stitch on, we're just going to repeat that whole process with the other side. So grab your back exterior panel, and just like before, let's find that midpoint along the top edge. And then right sides together, line up the zipper and the top of your exterior panel along their midpoint marks. And then clip the rest of the zipper to that exterior panel. And now we're just going to base this clipped edge down at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, once you have that basted down, grab your remaining lining panel and lay it right side down, so it's right side lining to right side lining. But line up that lining panel with that top edge by the zipper, and then just clip it in place. And now we're going to sew along this clipped edge at 1/4 inch seam allowance. Alright, once again, let's just press the lining away from the zipper first. And then take the back exterior panel and the lining panel and pull them both away from the zipper and press along that seam. You can do this on the front as well. Just kind of tug at your zipper to try to get a nice straight line along that zipper tape. All right, and just like before, we're going to top stitch along the exterior panel at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Alright, this should be where you're at. Go ahead and unzip your bag about halfway. Take the exterior panels and pull them up right sides together, and pull the lining panels right sides together just like this. We're going to clip these all right sides together. Right here around the zipper, I like to pinch the seam so it's pointing towards the lining panel. You'll see it naturally wants to go that way. Just let it. Pinch it so it goes towards the lining panel, and then pull the lining panels right sides together just like that. So I'll usually start with the edges of my zipper first and then pin the rest of it. Okay, so let's prep this bag to be stitched together. First, I suggest laying it so that the back of the piping stitches is wrong side up. So remember, we attached the piping to the heart part of our bag. So I have these stitches right here that go in. Those are my piping stitches. I want to see those when I'm sewing. So have it so that those stitches are facing up. On the bottom flat edge of your lining, go ahead and mark 4-inch opening. So I just use the grid lines on my cutting mat for that. We're not going to sew in between these marks. Also, I like to mark where my zipper tabs are. So if you did zipper tabs like I showed you, you can feel where the edge of your zipper tabs are. I like to just mark a little line right there, so I know I don't want to sew further in than that mark, because the zipper tabs we don't want in the seams. So again, I'm just going to feel and then just mark where that edge of my zipper tab is. I'm going to use my zipper foot at the sewing machine. We're going to start along one of our marked edges and sew around the entire bag. The pattern suggests using 1/2 of an inch seam allowance. If you want to avoid any sort of bagginess in your lining, increase that to about 5/8 of an inch seam allowance when you start here. But once you get up towards the intersection of the exterior and the lining, you want to make sure it's at about 1/2 of an inch, or whatever it is to get you close to that zipper tab without actually sewing on it. And then when we move to the exterior side of the bag, we just want to go right over that stitching for our piping. This will make sure that you don't see any of the stitches in the piping and that it's a nice tight stitch. Do the same thing as you get to the other side of the exterior and lining meeting, making sure you don't sew over your zipper tab. And then again, once you get into the lining, you can increase your stitch lengths to 5/8 until you get to your other mark. Make sure you backstitch well at the beginning and the end of this. this is the moment of truth. Before we trim down our seam allowance, let's go ahead and turn this out and make sure our piping looks okay. Sometimes the piping can get a little wonky, and if we need to redo it, we don't want to have a really skinny seam allowance. So that is looking good. The piping is all enclosed. I don't see any stitching on the piping. That's great. Okay, so I'm going to turn it back, wrong side out. This is a really easy bag to turn in and out, which is why I suggest doing that, especially with piping. Some bags are not so easy to do that with. Okay, now we're going to trim down the seam allowance to 1/4 inch, which is just half of what we sewed, except in this opening right here. Go ahead and leave that opening at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. You might have noticed when I was at the sewing machine, I do backstitch around the zipper, since that's an area of the bag that gets a lot more use than the other areas because you're tugging on that zipper pretty frequently. I like to backstitch over those seams just to give them a little extra support. Okay, now let's go ahead and turn the whole bag right side out. Make sure you put your finger in there and pop out those zipper tabs. And as long as you didn't sew over them, they should pop up really nicely. Yeah, so you see you have a little opening on the side, but man, those zipper tabs just look so nice. Okay, so pull your lining out after you have it all pressed the way you want. Now fold down that excess fabric that we left, and then just put your fingers in the hole and tug a little bit, and then clip along this folded edge. And now we can go to the sewing machine and just top stitch along that opening at an 1/8 inch seam allowance. All right, go ahead and push that lining into your pouch and push it out. Oh, this is such a cute little bag. And just to make sure your bag looks super, super put together when you're done, just go ahead and press it. If you're not using vinyl on the entire exterior, you can press it. If you are using vinyl everywhere, you don't need to press it because it probably looks perfect. And there we go. There's your bag. Oh my goodness. It's kind of difficult because I have that glare on that vinyl, but if you didn't have the glare, oh my goodness. Isn't this just the cutest little bag? All right, real quick. This is just one of those coil bracelets. You could also use those coil hair ties because some of those are really, really cute. I'm just gonna grab my little swivel hook. I'm just gonna clip it onto that. Oh, it's so stinking cute, right? I know for me, every single mom I know, this would be perfect. You could clip this inside your purse. You could just have whatever, products you need in there to get easy access to. This is great for kids. She has some really fun suggestions in the pattern on how to switch it up. But if you just added another little connector on the side, now you have like a super mini crossbody. Can you imagine like a little 4-year-old with their crossbodies? So yeah, this is a huge, huge winner pattern in my book. I think it's fantastic for beginners. Again, just take off the piping, take off the heart, and now it's a true, very, very perfect beginner bag. But if you want a little bit more of a challenge, it's really not challenging. Oh, but look at that. I'm trying to not get the glare. Oh, come on. Look at how pretty that is. You guys, this is such a fun pattern to make. And this is one of those patterns too that you could have like a production line going on where you could make like 20 of them in one sitting and just bust them out. They are so, so cute. So I cannot wait to see your guys' versions. Also, she suggests this alteration. You don't have to use a heart. You can create whatever shape you want and then just have it peek out or applique it on. They're both done the same way. Again, if you're going to applique the shape onto the fabric, I do suggest making sure that that shape is vinyl. Same thing on here. If you're going to use the applique from behind, make sure your exterior panel is vinyl. I know some of you guys are going to ask, like, this is the raw edges. So I don't have any problem with my vinyls raw edges. I don't, use a marker or anything on them. Here's this one as well. You can see it's really, with that 1/8 inch seam allowance around the heart, it's really not that big of a deal. Every time I do a video where I don't use my like colorful Tula Pink Bernina, I get asked a lot in the comments, what happened to your sewing machine? That sewing machine is being used for embroidery projects right now, so I move it to a different part of the house. It is so heavy that I can't really move it back and forth for the video. So today I was sewing on my Bernina 350. I love that little machine. It is so light, but it is a workhorse. I have made so many bags on it, masks, quilts, everything. So the Bernina 350 is one of my absolute favorite sewing machines. I would say even above the Tula Pink machine. I don't know. They're totally different beasts, but that's the machine I was using today. Well, I hope that this tutorial inspired you to go out and make a whole bunch of these. Like I said, I can think of so many people to give this to. It is such a useful, fun, beautiful little pouch. I cannot wait to see your versions. Make sure you tag me on social media if you post a picture of them. I'm at OklaRoots. Thank you for joining me here on the YouTube. I hope you have a great rest of the week. Get out there and make something. Bye.